All right, now let's see how we can use Firebase rules to grant read or write access to various users. So in our database, let's go to the Rules tab. You have seen this before. So earlier in the course, we set these read and write properties to true, which means anyone can read or write data to this database. Now let's say I only want logged in users to be able to read or write data. How do we do that? We change the value of these properties to a string that includes an expression. If that expression evaluates to true, read or write access will be granted. So I'm going to change this to auth not null. So remember auth state? I'm talking about this object here. I told you that when the user is logged in, auth state will have a value. Otherwise, it's going to be null. So this is the auth object we have here. If it's not null, that means the user is logged in. And similarly, I'm going to change this to auth not null. And now the user needs to be logged in order to read and write data to this database. Now, anytime we change any of these rules, we need to publish it in order to become effective. Beautiful. Now, to test if your rules are set up correctly or not, you can use this simulator here. And by the way, you don't need to publish before you can use the simulator. You can make changes here and use the simulator to make sure you're configuring the rules properly. So the simulation type, we can set it to read or write. And then we set the location. So here we are referring to the root node of the database. We can set this to restaurants or users or whatever. And then we can determine if the user is logged in or not. So currently authenticated is set to false. And when I click run, look, simulated read denied. And here we have a cross next to the line that causes this error. So this verifies that an anonymous user cannot read from our database. Now I'm going to change this authenticated to true. Set one of the providers here. I'm going to use Facebook. And then use a unique identifier. So this is the UID for my Facebook account. With this, if I click run, look, this time we have simulated read allowed. And you can see a tick next to the line that makes this configuration. Now, one thing you need to know about these rules is that you can apply them at different levels or different nodes in your database. So currently, we're applying them at the root level. I could have a custom read or write rule on the restaurants. So I can add .read here. And this time I'm going to set this to true. Now I know what you're thinking. You think that an anonymous user can read from restaurants node. But no, that's not possible. Because in Firebase, rules cascade from parent nodes to children. So this rule we have here will cascade to all children under the root node, which means this rule here is not going to be effective. Now, because of this implementation, sometimes for security reasons, you need to specifically structure your data. So if you give a user or a group of users access to a specific node, you know that all these users will be able to access any node under that node. So this is all about cascading rules. Now, how can we control that a specific user can access a certain node in our database? For example, here, under users, we have a separate node for each user, and this node is for my Facebook account. I want to make sure that no one but me can read or write from this node. Let me show you how to implement this. So, back to the Rules tab. Because I want to apply a rule under users, I'm going to add a new key value pair here. So users. Now under users, we have a separate node for each user. And the key of that node is the user's unique identifier. I can add another node here and use a parameter that starts with a $sign. Give this parameter a name. So this will represent a specific user node under users. And here we can apply our read and write rules. So let's say read. Now, instead of using auth not null, I'm going to use auth.uid. Remember this property? You have seen it before. I want to make sure this UID equals this parameter here, which is the key of that node. And of course, because of our cascading rule, remember, because this read rule overrides or cascades to rules deeper in the tree, I need to delete this here and either duplicate it under each parent node, or if you don't like this duplication, you can move all these nodes under a parent node and then apply this rule there. Of course, this will cascade to all that children. Potentially, you can have another node like public, and all nodes under public will be accessible to everyone, including anonymous users. So sometimes you need to structure your data for security reasons, and that's dependent on the kind of application you're building. Okay, now let's test this new rule with our simulator. I've set this to read. Now under users, here's my UID. I've set authenticated to true. Here's my provider, and I've used the same UID here. Let's run this. Okay, beautiful. Read allowed. However, if I change this UID to some other value to represent a different user, look, that user cannot read my user node. So this simulator is pretty handy, and make sure to use it to test your rules before you publish your application.